3 in the morning. Nathan Arliss had been awake for 19 hours straight, which was not unusual for the CEO of a company that managed the retirement savings of 400,000 Canadians. What was unusual was the sound coming from the 41st floor. Click, 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 fast, focused, the kind of typing that had a purpose behind it. Nathan had been sleeping on the couch in his corner office. Not because he was dedicated, he would tell you, but because the commute to his condo in Yorkville felt like a personal insult when the quarterly audit was due in 6 hours and the numbers still weren't reconciling. He sat up, socks on the wrong feet, dress shirt wrinkled beyond saving, and listened. The 41st floor was supposed to be empty. He grabbed his phone, walked into the dark hallway, and followed the sound to the end of the corridor, where the risk analysis suite was glowing a pale blue through the glass partition. He pushed the door open slowly, the way you do when you've already decided it's either a ghost or something worse. It was neither. Hazel Morrow was sitting in the senior risk analyst chair, wearing the gray uniform of the overnight cleaning crew, hair pulled back in a bun that had given up holding itself together around hour 6 of her shift. Her shoes were practical and scuffed. Her eyes were locked on 3 monitors at once, and her fingers were moving across the keyboard like she was having an argument with the computer and winning. She did not look up. She held up one finger, just one. The universal signal for "hold on, I'm busy," which was absolutely not a signal Nathan Arliss had ever received from a member of the cleaning staff at 11:45 on a Thursday night. "What?" he said. "Are you doing?" It was not a question. It came out flat, the way things do when your brain hasn't yet caught up to what your eyes are seeing. 1 second. She hit enter. The screen blinked. "You're in my company's system." The door was unlocked and the password was written on a sticky note under the keyboard. Hazel Morrow finally glanced at him, then glanced back at the screen. Which, just so you know, is the kind of corporate security that makes IT people cry. Nathan took 2 steps forward. "I'm calling the building." Done. She hit enter again. And then something happened that Nathan had not seen happen in 3 weeks of audits and emergency board calls and 18-hour days. The red column on the central monitor, the one that had been flagging a misalignment no one could locate, turned green. The reconciliation error that had been eating everyone's lunch since the 1st of the month simply disappeared, like it had never existed. Nathan stood there for a long moment. "Better," Hazel Morrow said, exhaling. "Better what?" "The error." She pointed at the screen. "Someone transposed 2 decimal values in the liability column. It's been compounding for 22 days. By morning, when your auditors ran the final numbers, you would have been off by approximately $800 million. She paused, the way someone does when they're trying not to say the obvious thing. "That's the kind of number that makes headlines." Nathan looked at the monitor, then at her, then at the monitor. "You fixed an $800 million error by yourself at 3 in the morning. Hazel stood and smoothed the front of her uniform with the automatic dignity of someone who has been underestimated before and has made her peace with it. "I was vacuuming. The screen was just there. The numbers were wrong." She said this the same way you might say the milk was off. "I tried to ignore it. I vacuumed the whole room. I went to get the mop." A brief pause. "The numbers were still wrong." Nathan rubbed his face with both hands. "What do you mean you tried to ignore it?" "It's like a splinter," Hazel said, unplugging a USB drive from the computer and tucking it into her pocket. "You know it's there. You tell yourself it's fine. But your brain keeps sending little signals and eventually." She made a small gesture. "You have to take it out." He stared at her. "I didn't cause it," she added, reading his expression with unsettling accuracy. "I just found it. The access log will show that. Check the timestamps." She picked up her mop bucket from the corner. "I'd like to keep my job if that's possible." Nathan stood in the doorway. "Come back at 7:30. She stopped. "Am I in trouble?" He considered the question honestly. "I have no idea. But I need you to explain what you just did because I have 6 analysts who have been looking for that error for 3 weeks. Hazel Morrow looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. 7:30, she said, and walked out. Nathan stayed in the glowing room alone, staring at a screen that finally made sense, and tried to figure out what on earth had just happened. At 7:28, she was already there. Gas station coffee in hand, the kind that comes in a paper cup with a logo that looks like it was designed in 2003. Wearing the same gray uniform, looking like someone who had slept 4 hours and had made a firm decision not to complain about it. Nathan had gone home, showered, returned in a suit that cost more than her monthly rent, and still felt somehow less prepared than she did. He pointed to the chair across from his desk. She sat. She took a long sip of coffee and sighed the way people do after a long shift of physical labor. "Start from the beginning," he said. "YouTube." He waited. That's where I learned, Hazel said. Financial modeling, Excel at an advanced level, some SQL. I started with bookkeeping tutorials because I was trying to manage the accounts for my grandmother's dry cleaning business in Brampton. She didn't want to pay an accountant. A small smile. She also didn't pay me, but that's a different conversation. Nathan's jaw moved slightly. And the liability model. Risk matrices are just pattern recognition. Once you understand the logic, the errors become obvious. Like a crooked picture. She tilted her head. Do you not see it when something's off? I run the company, Nathan said. I don't read the spreadsheets. Ah! She nodded. That explains a few things. He almost said something sharp. Then didn't, because she wasn't being rude. She was simply being accurate. He had HR pull her file that morning. Hazel Morrow, 29, Brampton, Ontario. Community college diploma, 3 years with the cleaning contractor, no criminal record, no formal finance credentials, no suspicious transactions, invisible as far as the system was concerned. You're going to have to walk my team through what you found, he said. Happy to. She finished her coffee. They're not going to love it. No, he agreed, they're not. She was right, they did not love it. By 10 that morning, Hazel had passed through the risk suite twice with her cart, stopped at 2 separate analysts' desks to quietly point out issues in their models. A misaligned axis here, a circular reference there, and had created a specific kind of office tension that Nathan could see building from his glass-walled office like weather coming in off the lake. The issue was not that she was wrong. The issue was precisely that she was right. Marcus Vale knocked on Nathan's door at 10:15. Marcus was the chief risk officer, tall, late 40s, the kind of man who had strong opinions about fountain pens and expressed them. He closed the door behind him. We have a situation. I know, she corrected Jennifer's model. In front of the team, was she right? A pause. Just brief enough to answer the question. That's not the point. Nathan leaned back. Then what is the point? The point, Marcus said, sitting down and crossing one leg over the other, is that a contract cleaning employee accessed our systems without authorization and is now walking through the finance department offering unsolicited analysis. That's a liability. That's a breach. He lowered his voice. Or it's something worse. She causes the problem, fixes it, becomes indispensable. Think about it, Nathan. It's not a bad play. Nathan said nothing, but because a part of him, small, cautious, trained by 12 years of running a company, had already thought the same thing. Marcus noticed. He always noticed. Let me look into her. If she's clean, fine. But if there's something there, you need to know before it becomes a story. He left. Nathan stayed at his desk, staring at the city below, and for the first time since 3 in the morning he wondered whether he'd made a mistake trusting her. Noon. The staff cafeteria. Hazel was sitting alone at a corner table with a container of leftover rice and a paperback novel. The kind with a cracked spine that had clearly been read more than once. Nathan got a coffee from the machine and sat down across from her without being invited. She looked up. You can sit wherever you want. You own the building. I don't own the building. I lease the 41st floor, semantics. She went back to her novel. You reorganized your lunch break, he said. She looked up again. What? The cleaning schedule. You moved your break from 12:30 to 12 so you'd finish the executive floor before the afternoon meetings. He had checked. He wasn't sure why he'd checked. You weren't supposed to. The original schedule had overlap with the boardroom prep at 1. Hazel set the book down. I moved it so there wouldn't be a conflict. The operations manager didn't notice. You care about whether there's a conflict. I care about efficiency. She said this without apology. Also, the boardroom table was being set wrong. The water glasses were going on the left of the place settings. That's not where water glasses go. Nathan looked at her. You corrected the boardroom setup. The catering staff didn't mind. She picked up her book again. They said thank you, actually. He watched her read for a moment. She read the way she did everything, focused, unbothered by his presence, completely at home in herself. Marcus thinks you're running a scheme, he said. Hazel turned a page without looking up. I know. He's going to investigate you. I know that too. She finally met his eyes. Let him. There's nothing to find. And if he plants something? She was quiet for a moment. Then, is that what you think he'd do? Nathan did not answer, which was its own kind of answer. Hazel looked at him with an expression that was not quite disappointment, and not quite resignation, but somewhere between the two. I'm used to it, she said finally, and went back to her novel. That bothered Nathan more than he expected. By Friday afternoon, Marcus had found something. He came in with a printed report and the particular satisfaction of a man who has been proven right. She accessed the risk server 4 times in the last month, always after midnight, always without logging a ticket. Nathan looked at the report, and each time there was an active error. Marcus tapped the page, which could mean she fixed errors, or it could mean she created them and fixed them. The effect is the same from the outside. The effect is $800 million not disappearing. The effect, Marcus said firmly, is that an unauthorized individual has recurring access to our most sensitive financial infrastructure. Nathan, I don't care if she's a genius, this is a governance issue. If the OSC gets wind of this, Nathan's assistant, a precise woman named Bridget, who had worked with him for 7 years, knocked and entered without waiting. Her face said something had gone wrong. The Calgary investors, Bridget said. They're here, 40 minutes early. Nathan stood. The presentation, the server isn't responding, the slides won't load, nothing is opening. Marcus was already moving toward the door, straightening his tie. I'll handle it. He did not handle it. Nathan stood at the front of the boardroom trying to project calm, while Marcus typed increasingly aggressive commands into a laptop that was not cooperating. The 3 investors from Calgary sat across the table in dark blazers, expressions politely neutral in the way of people who have seen many presentations go wrong and are already composing the email they'll send on the flight home. 6 minutes passed, then 8. Hazel came in with the coffee service. She moved quietly, the way she always did, placing cups with a precision that was somehow both efficient and graceful. Nathan watched her out of the corner of his eye. She placed the second cup, glanced at Marcus's screen, and stopped. Just for a moment, he saw it. The slight tension in her expression, the way her eyes tracked the error message. She set down the tray and took one step back, then another. She was talking herself out of it. Nathan could see the exact internal argument happening in real time. Marcus hit the laptop with the flat of his palm. One of the Calgary investors glanced at his watch. Nathan made a decision. Hazel, he gestured toward the laptop. Take a look. Marcus turned so fast he nearly knocked over his water glass. Nathan, she takes a look. She is a cleaning, and you've had 11 minutes and nothing is loading, so she takes a look. Nathan's voice stayed even. Please, Hazel. The room was very quiet. Hazel Morrow walked to the laptop, sat down, and did not rush. She looked at the screen for exactly 4 seconds. Then she opened the terminal, typed 2 short commands, paused, typed a third. The cursor blinked. The server reconnected. The slides loaded. All of them, clean and perfectly formatted, charts crisp, numbers aligned. Hazel stood, smoothed her uniform, and looked at Nathan. Circular dependency in the data refresh. The presentation was trying to pull live figures from a table that was locked for the audit. I just broke the loop and rerouted the reference. Silence. One of the Calgary investors, a woman in her 60s with the look of someone who had spent 40 years not being surprised by anything, leaned forward. Does she work in your IT department? No, Nathan said. She doesn't. What department? A pause. Facilities. The woman nodded slowly, the corners of her mouth doing something that was almost a smile. She began to clap once, twice, 3 times, the kind of clapping that is entirely sincere and somehow more powerful for being slow. The other 2 joined. Hazel stood with her hands at her sides and her face completely still, the expression of someone who does not know what to do with being applauded. Marcus stood beside the wall saying nothing, which was the loudest thing in the room. After the investors left, satisfied, handshakes firm, tone entirely different than it had been 40 minutes earlier. Nathan found Hazel in the corridor, stacking used cups onto her cart. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. You saved the meeting, I know. She didn't look up. He waited for something else. A joke, the way she usually deflected. But she just kept working, quietly, efficiently, and the silence had an edge to it. Hazel. She stopped. Didn't turn around. You know what the worst part is? Her voice came out level, but just barely. It wasn't the investors clapping. That was just awkward. The worst part was Marcus. She finally turned. The way he looked at me when you said, take a look. Like you'd asked him to let the cleaning lady perform surgery. A pause. Like I was something that had wandered in from outside. That's not what I know it's not what you think. She met his eyes. But it's what this place thinks. And you didn't correct it. Not really, you let me save the meeting, but you didn't say anything about why that was possible, so I'm still just the cleaning lady who got lucky. She picked up her cart. I know how that story goes. She walked away and Nathan stayed in the corridor feeling the specific discomfort of someone who has done the right thing in the wrong way. The next week, Marcus called a governance review. Full board, all 12 directors, 9 in the morning. Nathan sat at the head of the table. Marcus sat at his right, laptop open, expression of a man who has done his homework. Hazel came in with coffee as she always did, moving quietly around the table. When she set the cup down in front of Marcus, he spoke without looking at her. Thank you, Hazel. Try not to fix anything while you're here. Low laughter from 2 directors who didn't know better. Nathan looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at his laptop. "Since we're together," Marcus said, standing, "I think we should discuss a security matter I've been investigating." He turned the screen to face the room. "Our risk management server was accessed 6 times outside business hours over the past 4 weeks, each time between midnight and 4 in the morning, each time by the same individual without an authorized ticket." He paused. "That individual is Hazel Morrow." Every face in the room turned toward her. Hazel stood holding the empty tray, color draining from her face, posture straight. "Each time I accessed the server," she said, her voice quieter than usual but steady, "there was an active error. I can document every instance. I kept records, or," Marcus said, "you created those errors and positioned yourself as the solution." "That's not heroism, Hazel. That's manipulation. Potentially fraud." "I didn't. You accessed confidential infrastructure repeatedly, without authorization, without disclosure." Marcus took a step toward. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern." The room was very still. Hazel looked at Nathan, and Nathan saw what was in her face. Not just fear, but the specific exhausted look of someone who has been in this exact room before, being told by someone with a better suit that the thing they did wrong was exist somewhere they weren't expected. He should have spoken. He didn't. The words were there. He knew the timestamps were legitimate. He knew Marcus's theory was backwards. But the board was watching and the governance review was on record, and something in him, the part trained for 12 years in risk management, calculated the optics and stayed silent. Hazel saw it happen. He watched her see it, watched her understand. "Fine," she said quietly, and set the tray on the table with a careful final sound. She walked out, the door closed. One of the directors made a comment under his breath, another laughed. Nathan pushed back from the table. "Meeting's done." Marcus blinked. "We haven't done." He was already standing. "Everyone out." He went after her. She was already in the elevator, pressing the lobby button with the compressed focus of someone who is not going to cry in front of anyone. Not today, not here. Nathan came around the corner just as the doors started to close. "Hazel." The doors closed. He took the stairs. She was through the lobby and onto Bay Street by the time he hit the ground floor. He caught up to her half a block south, which required more running than was dignified for a man in a $3,000 suit. "Hazel, stop." She stopped, turned around. Her eyes were dry, which somehow made it worse. "What? I should have said something in there." "Yes," she said. "You should have. I didn't know how to." "You knew exactly how," she said. "You just made a different choice." She took a step back. "You know what's funny? I've had this exact conversation with myself 100 times. Don't get involved. Don't fix things that aren't yours to fix. Stay in your lane." Her voice stayed even. "But I cannot look at something broken and do nothing. I've tried. It doesn't work. So I fixed your server, I fixed your presentation, I fixed your boardroom table settings." She stopped. "And you still didn't say anything." Nathan had no answer because she was exactly right. "I'm going home," Hazel said, and walked away. This time he let her go. The building felt different the next morning, quieter in a way that had nothing to do with volume. Nathan noticed it at 6:45, arriving early as he always did, except now the 41st floor had the particular stillness of a space that hasn't been touched yet. Papers slightly disorganized. The pen holder on his assistant's desk a small disaster of mixed colors, blue, black, red, a green highlighter that had no business being in there. No one had aligned the chairs in the main conference room. He stood in the doorway of the conference room for a moment and then, he couldn't explain this, he went in and started adjusting chairs himself. Counting the distance between them, getting it wrong, getting it closer to right, standing back and feeling it still wasn't quite right. Bridget found him there. "Mr. Arliss." Her voice was very careful. "I'm checking the room setup. You've never checked a room setup in 7 years. I'm checking it now." He moved a chair 3 centimeters. "This one's crooked." Bridget looked at the chair. She looked at him. She backed out slowly. He found himself turning his coffee cup so the handle was on the right side. He thought about why he did it, and then he remembered, and then he stood in the break room alone, holding a perfectly positioned coffee cup, and missing a person he had known for 11 days. He did not have her number. He had not thought to ask, because she was the cleaning staff and he was the CEO, and that particular gap had seemed both obvious and entirely wrong to him for the first time at approximately 9:15 the previous morning, standing on Bay Street watching her disappear into the crowd. He called the cleaning contractor. Was told Hazel Morrow had ended her contract. He got her address from HR, which required a conversation he would rather not have had, and drove to Etobicoke on a Tuesday afternoon in his own car, without telling Bridget where he was going, which was unprecedented. The building was a 6-story walk-up on a quiet street west of the Humber. He buzzed apartment 4B. No answer. "It's Nathan Arliss." A long pause from the intercom. "I know," said the voice. "I have caller ID. That's not how buzzers work." I looked out the window. Another pause. "What do you want?" "To explain." "You explained fine. You were quiet." "That was the explanation." "Hazel." He put his hand on the intercom panel. "I found something. About Marcus. About why he was pushing this. Can I come up?" Silence, long enough that I almost left. Then the door clicked. Her apartment was small and very tidy in the way of someone who imposes order on a limited space. Books organized by height on a shelf above the radiator, a kitchen table covered in a grid of handwritten notes and printed spreadsheets, 2 plants on the windowsill, both clearly thriving. She had been working. She was not happy about being interrupted and was not pretending otherwise. "Sit down," she said, gesturing at the kitchen table. He moved the spreadsheets carefully to one side and sat. She stayed standing. "Marcus," he said, "is trying to force the sale of our data services division to a company his brother-in-law controls. I found transfer records. He's been laying groundwork for 3 months. Getting rid of the error documentation was part of it. If the audit came back clean without a clear explanation, it created the narrative that the division's risk models were unreliable." Hazel looked at him. He needed the division to look like a liability so the board would approve the sale, at a price that benefits him considerably, and I kept fixing the errors. She said it slowly, putting it together. "So he had to redirect. Make me the problem instead." "Yes." She sat down across from him. She looked at the table for a long moment. "You came here to tell me this, I came here to tell you this, and to ask you to come back." He met her eyes. "Not as a contractor. I want to create a role. Risk integrity analyst. You would report directly to me, not to Marcus." Hazel looked at him steadily. "You created a job title. I created an accurate job title for work that already exists and that you've already been doing for free at 3 in the morning." Something shifted in her expression just slightly. "What does it pay?" he told her. She blinked. "That's not a real number. It's a real number, Nathan." She said his name with the directness she applied to everything. "I have a community college diploma and a self-taught background in financial modeling from YouTube tutorials and my grandmother's bookkeeping ledgers. And you identified an $800 million transposition error, fixed a server failure during a live investor meeting, and uncovered a fraud scheme that 3 of my credentialed executives missed entirely." He paused. "What exactly is the objection?" She was quiet for a moment, then, "What happens to Marcus?" "I've already called the OSC. He's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His brother-in-law's firm is being reviewed." He looked at her. "It's documented properly this time." Hazel looked at the table, at her spreadsheets, at the window. "If I come back," she said slowly, "and someone makes a comment about where I came from, I'll correct it." "You said that easily." "Because I mean it. I didn't say it when I should have, and I know what that cost you, and I won't do it again." She was quiet for what felt like a full minute. Then, "I'm not signing anything tonight. I didn't bring anything to sign." "Then why are you still sitting at my kitchen table?" "Because," he said, and paused, and then said the honest thing. "Because I've been turning my coffee cup the right way all week and fixing the chair spacing in the conference room, and I'd like to stop doing those things alone." The expression on Hazel Morrow's face did something complicated. Somewhere between exasperated and something softer, which she covered almost immediately by standing up and going to the kitchen. "Do you want tea?" she said with her back to him. "Yes," he said. She put the kettle on. The OSC investigation moved quickly, as these things go when the documentation is meticulous and the person who organized it happens to have a compulsive need for thorough record-keeping. Marcus resigned before the formal hearing. His brother-in-law's firm withdrew the acquisition offer. The audit came back clean, the reconciliation confirmed. The $800 million error logged as prevented. Nathan scheduled a staff meeting for the following Wednesday. All staff, which at Arliss Financial meant the 41st floor plus the 3 floors below it, and specifically the facilities team. Hazel sat in the back. Nathan stood at the front and did not use notes. "Most of you know that the quarterly audit cleared without incident," he said. "What most of you don't know is why. 3 weeks ago at 3 in the morning, an error was identified and corrected that would have cost this company $800 million and a great deal worse. That was done by one person, working alone, on her own time, with no authorization and no expectation of recognition." He paused. "And instead of recognizing it, I allowed this organization to question her integrity. I allowed her to be publicly accused of the opposite of what she'd done, and I stayed quiet when I shouldn't have." He looked up. "That was wrong, and I want to say so in front of everyone." There was murmuring. He let it happen. "Hazel Morrow is joining this organization as our Director of Risk Integrity, effective Monday. She'll be building a function that frankly should have existed before now. If anyone has a question about her qualifications, I encourage them to look at the audit results and then to look at what happens when pattern recognition, intellectual honesty, and the willingness to fix something broken show up at 3 in the morning in a building full of people with credentials who didn't notice anything was wrong. He looked toward the back of the room. Thank you, Hazel, for all of it. She was going to roll her eyes. He could see her preparing to roll her eyes, which meant she was embarrassed and also slightly moved, which for Hazel was a significant emotional admission. Then someone started clapping. Bridget, as it happened, who had been waiting for exactly this moment, and it spread through the room, and Hazel sat in her chair in the back row and looked at the ceiling for a moment as if asking it for help. After, when the room had emptied out, she came to find him in the corridor. Your tie is crooked, she said. He looked down. Is it 2 degrees to the right, maybe 3? She stopped in front of him. May I? He stood still while she straightened it, close enough that he could see the concentration in her expression, the slight press of her lower lip when she was focused. She stepped back and assessed. Better, she said. Thank you. She looked at him. He looked at her. Outside, through the corridor windows, the Toronto skyline sat in the late afternoon light, lake glittering in the distance. Dinner, he said. That depends. On what? On whether you're asking because you feel you owe me something or because you actually want to. He thought about the tea in her kitchen, the spreadsheets on her table, the way she'd turned her back when her expression got too honest. Because I actually want to. Then dinner, she said. But I choose the restaurant. Why? Because I'll spend the whole meal fixing the table settings if I don't know they're right going in. She said this completely seriously. It's more efficient. That's very practical. I'm a very practical person. You're an extraordinary person, he said, and meant it with no particular strategy, which was new for him. Hazel looked at him for a moment, measuring something. Then Saturday. She walked toward the elevator, stopped, turned back. Nathan, yes, the pen holder on Bridget's desk. She said it with the expression of someone who has been sitting on this information for 2 weeks. The red pens are mixed in with the black pens. I'll tell her. You won't. She hit the elevator button. You'll do it yourself, and you'll feel better afterward. The doors opened. She stepped in. He watched the doors close, and then he turned and walked to Bridget's desk and sorted the pens by color. And he did feel better afterward, which was either a sign that Hazel Morrow had changed something in him already, or a sign that order had always made sense and he just needed someone to point it out. He thought it was probably both. Saturday came with the particular clarity of a late autumn evening in Toronto. Cold enough for coats, warm enough for restaurant patios with heat lamps if you sat close. They sat close. Hazel had chosen a place in Kensington with mismatched chairs that she immediately assessed and deemed acceptable, which Nathan understood by now was a meaningful endorsement. She brought the USB drive. He raised an eyebrow. I want you to see all of it, she said, setting it on the table beside the breadbasket. Every error I found, every fix, every timestamp. Not because you don't believe me, because I want to stop carrying it around. He took the drive. Okay, that's it? Just okay? What else should I say? Hazel considered this. Nothing. Okay is right. She picked up the menu. Okay is exactly right. They talked for 3 hours. About the audit, and about her grandmother's dry cleaning business, and about the particular stress of running a company that held 400,000 people's retirement savings, and about what it felt like to see a number wrong and be physically unable to leave it that way. She described it like a sound only she could hear, persistent, low-grade, impossible to tune out. He described what it felt like to manage a company of that scale without being able to trust the numbers the way she did, and she listened with the full attention she gave to everything. When the bill came, they argued over it briefly. She won. He made a note to remember that she was going to win these things and to stop being surprised. On the walk back to where he'd parked, she stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at a streetlight that was flickering slightly, on-off, irregular. That's going to bother me, she said. You can't fix a streetlight. I know. She looked at it for another moment. It's still going to bother me. He looked at her, looking at the light, at the way she stood in the cold, hands in her coat pockets, accepting a small imperfection she couldn't touch. Come on, he said. I'll walk you to the subway. She fell into step beside him and they walked in the easy silence of 2 people who have already said most of the important things and are comfortable with what's left unsaid. Monday, she said as they reached the station. Monday, he agreed. She went down the steps, stopped halfway, looked back up at him. Nathan, yes, the conference room. 3rd chair from the left on the north side. She said it with complete calm. It's been 2 centimeters off since Tuesday. He opened his mouth. I know, she said. I'll fix it Monday. She disappeared into the station. He stood on the pavement in the November air, smiling at the top of the staircase, and thought that some things, the right numbers, the right person, the chairs aligned exactly as they should be, were worth every morning it took to get them right.